disaster. We are not trying to open old wounds. We are trying to just tell the story that persons who weren't born then can know really what happened. As part of the exhibition, when you go upstairs, you would read the personal stories of those who survived, even those who were affected by the disaster. And you will see images. And one of the things we try to do is give you a replica, provide a replica of what the boat looked like. I hope that we achieve that very much. We will also, you will also be able to read the names of the 232 or 33 persons who perished on that day, this day, 50 years ago. I want to thank a lot of people because it wasn't possible without some people. And key is my researchers, because if we don't do the research, if we don't present the accurate information, then we won't be telling the story correctly. And so my research team was led by Nikova. She's done an excellent job, and she was assisted by Nede. And these young ladies, they're awesome. Any information you want to know about St. Kitts, you come, and it's like, it's like it's sitting right there with them. They know the history, and they did a very fantastic job in doing the research. But it wasn't possible without the documentary information that we found in Dr. Whitman Brown's books. He has indicated to me that he's published a fourth book, and hopefully we can negotiate with him to have that book in our gift shop when it's available. But his three books that he published provided us with immense amount of information, and he generously allowed us to use the data to present as part of this exhibition. Now, I always tell people that doing this exhibition, they're not cheap. And the St. Christopher National Trust, it's part of our mandate to tell the history of St. Kitts and Nevis. It's part of our mandate to preserve it. It's part of our mandate to protect it. And so we have to do it. If we don't do it, it won't get done. But it's costly to do it. And just like how I said a week and a half ago that when we mounted the Sir Kennedy exhibition, that it cost $18,000, this one cost a whopping $22,000. And so we need the funds to do this. And I say this because our history, like we say as part of our motto here, belongs to all of us. And it is incumbent on all of us to ensure that this history is protected. And so, but to do that, it costs money. And it's not the total responsibility of the government to support this. And so we are pleading nicely, and I hope my president, when he comes behind me, plead really hard as well, for persons to donate funds towards this exhibition. Now, the exhibition is intended to last for a while, a very good while. So we won't take it down. It'll be up for a lot of months. It is the first time that we're going to leave an exhibition up this long because we want to ensure that every single citizen get the opportunity to come and see this exhibit. We also intend to share it with the Nevis public when we take it down from here. And so we hope that those persons who in Nevis who didn't get the opportunity to come down to visit with it, that they will be able to see it in Nevis as well. I want to thank all those persons who worked tirelessly. And I won't come back to say thanks, I'm going to say it now. I want to tell a story in saying thanks. I approached Her Majesty's prison and I said, I want to build this centerpiece for my exhibition. And they came, they looked, they say, we can't do that in 3 days. So I said, if there's one person in St. Kitts I know could build this in 2 days, and I called that person, and it was built in a day. Mr. Otney Heiliger, thank you. Thank you. He left his work, what he's doing, where he's making his living, to build us that centerpiece you're going to see up there. And then there's Mr. Joseph Herbert. Well, the prison did do something. They found him for me, and he came, and he constructed the ship. Well, I was panicking because up to 2 o'clock the ship ain't reached here yet. I wondered if it sank, but it's there, and I want to thank him and his team tremendously for constructing a replica of the boat. So those of you who don't know what the boat looked like, you will get an idea of it. And he did a fantastic job constructing it out of cardboard. So Those two persons played a very critical role in ensuring that this exhibition is mounted. I must tell you that the exhibition there, what you're going to see there, you will have to come back. You will have to come back and spend some time reading it. You can't do it today. You're just going to walk through the room and you're going to look at it, but you're going to have to come back and really absorb what we are presenting to you. The stories are immense. The history is awesome. You can't not come and visit this exhibition. We are open every day for the next 3-4 months, and we're going to be opening on Saturdays for those persons who work and can't come during the week. So on Saturdays, we're open from 9 to 12, and so those persons can come. I want to thank you all for coming out this afternoon and witnessing the exhibition and for your support, your kind support. And I hope that what we deliver, that we will get raving reviews and recommendations on how we may be able to enhance the exhibition once you've gone through the room. Thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon.
All right, thank you very much, Willis Percival, for those welcome remarks and giving that overview, the backdrop to this Christina disaster exhibition here at our National Museum. At 4:10 precisely, we want to observe a minute's silence. With that in mind, it seems as if Mr. Snideman Warner might have his remarks curtailed because of the mandate that we have to bring up the minute of silence at 4:10. But Snideman, please come and give your presidential address.
Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Timothy Harris, members of the St. Christopher National Trust, our distinguished guests, gentlemen and ladies, good afternoon. I begin by first thanking the Executive Director of the St. Christopher National Trust, Ms. Willis Percival, and her staff for the tremendous hard work they've put in over the past weeks, putting this exhibition together. You will, as members, be immensely proud of what you see, and all who come and visit it will appreciate what has been done. As Ms. Percival pointed out, cost of running the St. Christopher National Trust and maintaining its mandate is one that is a very burdensome one. And the support of the St. Christopher National Trust is not just for its exhibitions, is not just to support the ordinary running of the trust, but also when you leave the tent, I encourage you to look upwards at the building, and you'll realize that our building is in need of work. The conservative estimate to have this building properly restored is $1.5 million US. And so I not only ask you to remember the St. Christopher National Trust in your presence, but when you're writing your wills, to also remember us. And so have your executors be mindful that the St. Christopher National Trust is about preserving St. Kitts for posterity. And this building has been here 126 years this year. It's going to be here even longer. Wouldn't you like to know that even 126 years from now, you'll be contributing to St. Christopher National Trust? So please support the St. Christopher National Trust and all that it has done. This afternoon, we are here for a remembrance of the people who died on a sunny day like it is now, 50 years ago on a Saturday afternoon. We are here to celebrate the persons who survived that event. But we're also here for a sad occasion, because after 50 years, we still have nothing on the island of St. Kitts to commemorate the events of August 1st, 1970. Let me give you some symbolism. There were approximately 50,000 people on St. Kitts and Nevis. in 1970. There were approximately 8 million people in New York City on September the 11th, 2001. The population of the United States of America on that day was 285 million people. Now, about 230 people died in St. Kitts Nevis. If the same number of New Yorkers had died that day, the death toll would have been 36,000. But taken as a nation, if the same number of Americans had died that day, 1,285,000 people would have died that day. That is what the death of those people meant. There wasn't a single person alive that day who did not know someone who was on that boat. And there wasn't a single person who was alive that day who was not related to someone who died that afternoon. And it is for me, to our collective embarrassment and shame, that we do not have on the island of St. Kitts a permanent memorial to that event. We have at the far end of the Irish Town Bay Road an obelisk commemorating 26 men who died defending the King of England and his empire in World Wars I and II. But we have nothing on St. Kitts commemorating 230 Kittitians and divisions who died that day through a combination of fate, maybe God intended it, through negligence, the way the boat was maintained in terms of its manpower, and maybe through incompetence, who knows? But regardless of why those people died, those people deserved to be remembered. Those people deserved to be honored. We do not have in our schools any teaching of what goes on. If we go back to the War Memorial, as we call it, in November each year, we stop traffic on that Sunday, and we ask people to observe a minute's silence to honor those people. But we do nothing about these ordinary men and women, boys and girls who died that day. This should not be. This should be taught in our schools. And so I say, we today celebrate Emancipation Day, when our colonial forebears released our forefathers from enslavement. Let this be our emancipation from this blight on our memories. We must do something about it. If you go to the Springfield Cemetery, there is no indication that many people have been, if I may be so rude about it, dumped into a mass grave at Springfield Cemetery. There's not even a single cement block saying this is where those people were buried. These things must be corrected. And as people here on St. Kitts, we ought to emulate our division brothers and sisters and have on St. Kitts a commemoration to those people in an appropriate place to celebrate their lives and to remember them and the lessons that they would have taught us. Gentlemen and ladies, it is never too late to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
I want to thank Mr. Snideman Warner, the President of the National Trust, for that sterling, touching address, bringing home some very sharp points about what we need to do as Kittitians and divisions to honor those who perished in this terrible tragedy. And I hope that we can do something sooner rather than later, so that at least by next year, we can come back here and say, look what we have done. We have now honored those who perished in the Christina disaster. This is the fitting tribute to them. So let us hope that the stakeholders will move expeditiously on this matter and have it done. It is now just about 10 minutes after the hour of 4 o'clock, and I'm going to invite you to stand for 1 minute silence in honor of those who perished in this Christina disaster 50 years ago. The silence begins now. Thank you. You may be seated.
List of survivors: Reuben Allen, Carlton Arisbeth, Joseph Boylett, Vincent Benjamin, Robert Blake, Michael Brisbane, Ivor Brooks, Arrington Brown, Clifford Brown, Dulcita Brown, Edna Brown, Franklin Brown, Leonard Brown, Lulilia Budgeon, Joseph Budgeon, Roger Brown, Tom Carlton, Charles Chapman, Meredith Charles, Edward Clark, Wilson Crandall, Everson Davis, William Denning, William Depuzar, Terence Duzan, Lionel Edwards, Ivan Elliott, Bertram Foster, James France, Rudolph Francis, Samuel Freeman, Eustace Hanley, Vincent Harris, Ronald Hendrickson, Alice Herbert, Robert Hines, Fitzroy Huggins, Philip Huggins, Jonathan James, Leroy James, Belinda Jeffers, Charles Johnston, Llewellyn Johnston, Edmund Kelly.
Ian Kelsick, Samuel Lake, Devon Liebert, Edwin Liebert, Joseph Martin, Julie Martin, Samuel Mason, Frank Matthews, Edward Merchant, Charles Moore, Franklin Morton, Vincent Morton, Shernell Mulrain, Carlton Nisbet, Gerard Prentice, Conrad Prokop, Clive Rollins, Eustace Richard, Alice Richardson, Wendell Richardson, Copeland Roberts, Joseph Robertson, Leroy Sage, Lofton Sargent, Livingston Sargent, Clive Scarborough, Malcolm Simmons, Victor Simmons, Vincent Stapleton, Earl Storrod, Victor Swanston, Grenville Truss, Livingston Trotman, Oswald Tyson, Herman Uddenberg, St. Clair Walwyn, Job Wabb, Cecil Warner, James Weeks, James Wenham, Wendell Wilkinson, Diana Williams, Leroy Williams, Arby Wilson, Louis Solas Wilson were the survivors of the Christina disaster.
Okay, those are some of the names that we wish to memorialize at this time. We continue our program here this afternoon with a poem written by Jehan Williams. Okay. Presented, not written. All right.
Good afternoon, all. And with the protocol being established so ably by our chairman, I hope he allows me to adopt it, save for the opportunity to recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, and Mr. Schneidman Warner and the other members and executive members of the National Trust and the museum. Now, as Ms. Percival said in her remarks earlier today, Dr. Whitman Brown has written extensively on the issue of the Christina disaster, and in one of his works called The Christina Disaster in Retrospect, Error, Tragedy, Challenge, and Hope, a Caribbean Story, it outlines a number of newspaper extracts and retrospections from persons who would have experienced or would have been alive at the time of the disaster. And what I wish to share with you is a poem written by H. Ritz. It was written and dedicated to the memory of those that lost their lives, those that survived, and those who lost loved ones on that fateful last ride of the Christina. So I commend this poem to him and to those persons, and of course to encourage persons who are 50 and under who would not have been alive at the time to know or to feel what was in the atmosphere, to read the literature, see the works that have been created that speak to the disaster, because we need to know about it. It is part of our culture and history. So this is The Fate of the Christina, written by H. Ritz on August 20th, 1970. When I think about the many sea disasters and the ships that lie beneath the sea so cold, then it brings to mind the fate of the Christina, and it has to be the saddest story ever told. If you care to stop and listen to my story, but no doubt you've heard it many times before, about the sinking of a Caribbean ferry on a sunny afternoon just about 4. They had boarded the ferry boat Christina to sail out across the dark blue sea, not knowing that the fete day they had planned for, a day of sad mourning, would be. With gay hearts, they set sail for Nevis, an island not many miles away. Near dreamt as they left St. Kitts Island what fate would befall them that day. She sailed on her course with her burden, but she seemed to be laboring with her load. All at once, as though demons possessed her, she pitched, and then over she rolled. It seemed that all hell broke loose that moment. It happened so fast, they say. With a shudder, she sank to the bottom, taking many to a watery grave that day. Some swam to shore and some were rescued, and a little girl clung onto some debris. As she floated in that shark-infested water, a boat came by and plucked her from the sea. Friends searched for days for their loved ones and could not understand that it could be. With tear-strained eyes and hearts that were so heavy, they still stand there staring at the vengeful sea. 'Twas not the amount nor damage, nor the value of all that it cost, but the sad tale that comes from those waters, where the lives of so many loved were lost. It was a sad tale that comes from those waters, where the lives of so many loved were lost.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jihan, for that touching poem. We're now going to have some more names read.
This is the list of missing persons. Ezekiel Allen, Miriam Allen, Shirley Allen, Floretta Archibald, Samuel Archibald, Amy Atherton, Bertrand Atherton, Emily Atherton, Valentine Ordain, Errol Bartlett, Francine Bartlett, Ellen Bazzi, Mavis Bazzi, Austin Bell, Monroe Brown, Muriel Brown, Harold Brown, Josephine Brown, Olga Brown, Gwendolyn Bojan, Millicent Byron, Alan Cable, Orilda Carr, Sharon Chapman, Clementina Charles, Anita Clark, Grenada Clark, Euphina Clark, Leslie Clark, Sarah Clark, Delia Claxton, James Claxton, Vernon Claxton, Christine Condell, Loretta Cornelius, Carl David, Christina David, Joseph David, Leon David, Mavis David, Verna David, Laniel Davis, Leontine Daniel, Claristine Dorr, Jessica Dorr.
Myra Dorr, Wendell Deport, Kennedy Elliott, Albertha Esdale, Zenith Farrell, Albertine Ferguson, Esmil Ferguson, Daniel French, Moses Frank, Augusta Freeman, James Glassford, Melvina Gums, Lillian Halliday, Conrad Hanley, Hugh Hanley, Melford Hanley, Rose Hanley, Bethia Hill, Marilyn Myrna Hobson, Emily Holland, Nelson Leroy Huggins, James Irvine, Esther James, Vernon James, Clifford Jeffers, Dwight Jeffers, Maureen Jeffers, Ralph Jeffers, Clotilda Johnson, Michael Johnson, Emily Jones, Iris Jones, Vida Jones, Louisa Joseph, Sheila Joseph, Avril Cynthia Kelly, Eugene Kelly, Verna Lance, Calvin Lewis, Beryl Liburd, Castro Liburd, Edric Paul Liburd, Emerson Liburd, Evelyn P. Liburd, Iris Liburd, Kirsten Olivia Liburd, Kirtley Liburd, Elvira Liburd, Lillian Liburd.
Louisa Liburd, Marian Liburd, Thomas Liburd, Samuel Liburd, Cheryl Martineau, Eva Marson, Leroy Masters, Charles Maynard, Sadie Maynard, Iditha Michael, Henrietta Mills, Maud Mills, Clavin Morton, Clarice Morton, Inez Morton, Irma Morton, Orville Morton, Pearl Morton, Ann Natta, Govan Nisbet, Tony Nisbet, Daldria Nolan, Ulita Nolan, Tessa Nolan, Florence Paris, Hannah Paris, Calvin Pemberton, Rufus Pemberton, Conrad Phipps, George Powell, Miriam Powell, Cheryl Powell, Yvette Powell, Evanston Prentice, Anthony Prince, Austin Reed, Asinette Richards, Joseph Richens, Leroy Rouse, Venerine Sadler, Alicia Scarborough, Dwayne Scarborough, Inez Scarborough, Edward Smith, Ivan Smithen, Christina Smithen, Keith Springett, Darrell Swanston, David Swanston.
Theodosia Swanston, Marilyn Thompson, Alton Trotman, Iris Trotman, Irvin Trotman, Alston Tross, Dave Tyson, Kirsten Tyson, Yvette Wade, Candy Wallace, Lorna Wallace, Judith Walters, Virginia Walters, Wentworth Parks Walwyn, Violet Watley, Valcine Watts, Aldina Weber, Benjamin Weeks, Elroy Weeks, Elroy Weeks, Louisa Weeks, Louisa Weeks, Nicholas Weeks, Rita Weeks, Amelia Wheeler, Curtly Williams, and Vernon Williams. May their souls continue to rest peacefully.
List of persons identified: Rodney Arthurton, Lillian Busu, Franklin Bell, Sherwin Bertie, Adolphus Blois, Robert Brown, Anthony Condell, Irene Condell, Sister Amelia Comer, Sister Patricia Deneen, Amelia Duport, James Elliott, Florence Esdale, Clarence Forbes, Emily Forbes, Cluvert H. Francis, Tamar Freeman, Lorraine Griffin Bay, Bertram Hanley, Eglantine Hanley, Zena Hanley, Rosalind Henry, Marilyn Hendrickson, Maxwell King Herbert, Alice Huggins, Frances Holton, Olga Jones, Rosalie Agatha Jeffers, Edith Jones, Aretha Jones, Carmen Joseph, Vinetta Joseph, Sister Mary LeBlanc, Mrs. E.P. Liebert, Elvira Liebert, Kristen Olivia Liebert, Marian Liebert, Maud Lucilla Martineau, Linda McQuilkin, Vivian Mills, Ursula Morris, Herbert Nisbet, Lillian Nisbet, Helen Pemberton, Birdie Phillips, James Pontine, Marian Powell, Evan Richardson, Vivian Stanley, Evan Stapleton, Stanley Sutton, Hanshel Swanston, Samuel Sweeney, Marilyn Tross, Theodosius Tyson, Aconel Weeks, George Jinks Williams, List of persons unconfirmed: Samuel Huggins, Dawn Lawrence, James Liebert, Rose Morton, Calvin Smithen, Joseph Vernon, Marion Weeks.
Thank you very much to all the readers of the names of those who have passed on to eternity, those who have survived this tragedy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. You know, when I reflect, my personal recollection of that day was, I got a call from ZIZ. At the time, it was my first job at ZIZ out of Bastia High School. And I'd gone to Antigua for Carnival as a youngster, you know, back in the day. I had the opportunity, I was hoping to host a show that night at the Antigua Recreation Grounds. And I got a call from ZIZ that afternoon. Junie, Christina went down. Many lives have been lost, and the boss said, catch a plane. I was shocked. Not at the fact that I was told to come home, but when he told me the numbers, he went into some explanation of, I think it was either Arthur Gray or Von Rebop Southwell. My memory on that is not too clear. But one of them called. And I took a plane, I came back down the afternoon, late, and I came straight down here at the Treasury Pier. And at that time, there were bodies, they were bringing back bodies, and it was just ghastly. And of course, I had to go because ZIZ was bringing non-stop coverage and reading out names, and people were sending in, have you seen so-and-so? What about this person? There was a lot of anxiety and fear and frustration at the time. We should have been favored at this juncture with a musical rendition by King Socrates, but he's not here, so I think we'll play the song instead. We have the song, Willis, so we'll play it. Okay, all right.
What happened? Let me get started.
Sure.
Good afternoon to everyone. Protocols observed. What happened is that Socrates should have been here this afternoon, but he had an emergency. So what he did, he just gave me the music. So what is going to happen now is that we're going to listen to his song. This song was specially written for this event. So it took, as Willis said, we just tried to deliver. Overnight, he did this song, put it all together in his studio. So now take a listen.
Tragedy. Some loved ones were recovered, some never seen again. But the pain of that sad memory remains. To some, it's just a faded memory. While some can't stand to be reminded of that tragedy. They're still struggling to find closure when it's sinking of the Christina to mother, father, son, and daughter. Suddenly to be in the car, we found that this will not happen again. While yet to address those still in pain, but when loved ones suddenly taken, tore the world apart. deliver on broken hearts. Some memories we suppress, we cope with the sadness of human tragedies, most traumatizing. Imagine the misery when someone family is missing. Uncles, aunties, cousins, most of your siblings. Many desperately join the search parties as they clung to hope. Many felt great on their knees as they need to cope. Survivors told stories of the many they tried to save, and the many they saw go down to a watery grave. To some it's just a faded memory, while some can't stand to be reminded of that tragedy. Yes, they're struggling to find closure from when this maritime disaster took mother, father, son, and daughter suddenly to the hereafter. We hope that this will not happen again. We're yet to address those still in pain. For when the sudden loss of their loved ones tore the world apart, some have followed on broken hearts. Though many books have been written, many of the younger ones are not taught in school about this tragedy. In our school's curriculum, there's little or no mention, because we choose to teach selective history. The story of the Titanic, we know wholeheartedly, but leave it up to Captain Speed to play some peace annually. No wonder there's no closure. Some 50 years on, this time we gather to honor all. To some it's just a faded memory, while some can't stand to be reminded of that tragedy. Yes, they're struggling to find closure from when this maritime disaster took mother, father, son, and daughter suddenly to the hereafter. We hope that this will not happen again. We're yet to address those still in pain. For when the sudden loss of their loved ones tore their world apart, some still go on broken hearts.
As always, the King Socrates, on the money, as we say. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear from our Prime Minister as we invite the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. the Honorable Timothy Harris, to address us on this occasion. Dr. Harris.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Could we give Juni Liebert again another round of applause for officiating at this important ceremony? I want, of course, to adopt the protocol so ably established before me. Save, I must also recognize the leadership of our National Trust and National Museum, and ask that we give them a special round of applause for putting on today's exhibition. Yesterday, quite a number of us were in Nevis for a similar kind of a commemorative activity regarding the Christina. Many of the speakers before me were able to draw vividly on their recollection, as that has been part of their lived experience. I couldn't draw similarly because I have no direct memory of the Christina disaster then in 1970. I was still too young to perhaps have wandered too far. And although my father is a deeply rooted Nivision man, I never heard him speak a lot about Christina disaster. Nonetheless, as we observed the minute of silence at around 4:10 p.m. today, the approximate time at which the MV Christina sank, and as we heard a while ago, the names so movingly read of those who were lost to the national tragedy of Saturday, August 1st, 1970, it was hard not to feel incredibly emotional over what's transpired in our beautiful country some 50 years ago today. Right about this time, on the 1st of August 1970, feelings of fear, concern and horror gripped the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as word spread regarding the worst disaster ever to hit our country, and for that matter, the worst maritime disaster to hit the Eastern Caribbean, at least in modern times. About some 230 souls perished on that clear, sunny day here in St. Kitts and Nevis, which in 1970 had a population somewhere in the region of 45,000 people. In this very close-knit community, the scale of the disaster seemed to have magnified 100 times, because just about everybody knew somebody who was on the MV Christina, or knew someone who knew someone who was on board. In very real terms, the casualty figures represented mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, daughters, sons, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends who played a central role in their families' economic security and emotional stability. They were also a critical part of the lifeblood of the country, as many of them were at their most productive stages of life. They included Nivisians who were going home for the weekend after a week of working in St. Kitts, or after selling their vegetables in St. Kitts for the day. They also included Kittitians who wanted to lime in Nevis and enjoy the horse racing and other activities in the company of friends and family members over the holiday. The passengers came from all walks of life and all age groups, and they knew that Nevis was the place to be over the long August holiday weekend, and that for the working people, the MV Christina was the main means to get there. There were government officers on board, as well as students and people in nursing, teaching, and other well-respected professions that made a positive impact and a difference in people's lives. For instance, Ian Kelsey, who survived the MV Christina disaster, was then a pilot with Leeward Islands Air Transport Service Limited, LEAD, the precursor to LEAD 1974 Limited. In many, if not all the cases, the MV Christina passengers also made a big difference in their families' lives. For instance, another Christina survivor, Devon Liebert, who some may know as Lord Cut from his Calypso stage name, was on his way from St. Kitts to Nevis to take food and messages from his mother on St. Kitts to his grandmother on Nevis. Although Lord Cut was only 12 years old then, he served in the important role of interlocutor or go-between in ensuring the continuation of the bond between his mother and his grandmother. Perhaps the training ground of having to pass along their messages is what drove Lord Cut to become a storyteller through music, in much the same way that the sunken hopes and dreams of those we lost on August 1st, 1970, have compelled us to steer our country towards success and inspired us to push onward against the invisible waves as adversities, challenges, and obstacles. In a way, we can't help it because it is in our blood. It is part of our essential nature. It's as though collectively we keep floating, moving and rising on behalf of those who got swept out to sea, and we were rendered aimless and helpless against the waves. Thankfully, the shock and awe of that awful day did not sink our will to live or our drive to survive. Instead, August 1st, 1970, accelerated and heightened our quest for progress and advancement. As visitors to this touching exhibition at the St. Christopher National Trust and National Museum, we'll see through some of the personal stories on display. 50 years later, hope floats in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. Today, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis know in their heart of hearts that the best is yet to come in the form of a stronger and safer future. And we know that we can get there with optimal results through fortitude, resilience, determination, and endurance, the same traits that got our country through the Christina disaster. These are the same traits that helped steer us to independence and made us succeed against the odds. The story of our nation's journey from poverty to progress and from heartbreak to healing mirrors the evolution of those who left behind to survive the loss of their loved ones. They too are the survivors. There are people like Romeo Paris, then of Craddock Road, Nevis, who was just 5 years old when his mother died during the Christina disaster. Indeed, he and I were the same age when the Christina sank. And latterly, Romeo, who I came to know as Alfred, would join me at the Tabernacle Primary School and then the Keon High School. He had then been adopted by two persons from Tabernacle, a husband and a wife. Romeo's mother left behind in 1970 8 children, 5 boys and 3 girls. They were soon separated after the disaster. Romeo had a hard scrabble childhood, which is told in the heartbreaking detail in Whitman T. Brown's sweeping account of the Christina disaster. In 1985, Romeo would receive a government scholarship to study pharmacology at the community college in Barbados, and he graduated in 1989. In July of 1982, that same survivor Romeo opened a business, and he would eventually own a number of drug and health food stores with his cousin Mac. He now has one, I think, in Westbourne Street. Despite his entrepreneurial success, Romeo still hurts over the early loss of his mother and the way his brothers and sisters grew up apart from one another, recalled Whitman Brown in his book. Our nation owes a debt of gratitude then to the heroes who spared many others from becoming orphaned on the 1st of August, 1970. The heroes include Frank Matthew Tyson, the captain's first mate who assisted in rescuing many persons. Among the list, we must count Dulcita Brown, who used a bag of breadfruits to help Edna Brown survive. We count also Rupert Wade and Earl Paris, who fortuitously were traveling in a fishing boat behind the MV Christina and were so close enough to rescue the first passengers who fell overboard. Rupert Wade also summoned the Sea Hunter, deep sea fishing boat, for help, and fortunately for its first mate, Winston Sonny Skeet, also known as Sonny Boy, was still on the boat, putting it up for the night after a fishing trip. Captain Winston Skeet of the MVC Hustler deserves a round of applause for his outstanding service. He, Rupert Wade, Earl Paris, Robert Jeffords, Rupert Maynard, Foster Huggins, and Captain Philip Miller, who later joined the rescue mission, helped pull both dead bodies and living persons from water. And Skeet also contacted ships by radio to muster additional support. Michael King, who had a small boat, also joined the rescue mission and coordinated with the Sea Hunter in the effort. According to Commissioner J.D.B. Rehnquist's report on the circumstances surrounding the sinking of the MV Christina, dated 1st October 1970, he, referring to Michael King, took everyone he rescued to the Sea Hunter. He made about 4 such trips. The Sea Hunter then took 63 survivors and 3 dead bodies back to Jones Bay. There they were met by George Bradley, government secretary. The survivors were taken to the hospital where they were treated, some discharged and others detained. The Sea Hunter put back out to sea, this time with Captain Miller in command, and continued rescue operations on the painful task of recovering dead bodies from the sea. The young medical doctor who treated the first survivors at the Alexander Hospital was Dr. Kennedy Simmons, who 13 years later, who 13 years later would go on to become the country's first Prime Minister and is now our only living national hero. What's more, the doctor who took over on that fateful day from Dr. Simmons later that evening, on August 1st, 1970, was the late Dr. Cuthbert Sebastian, who was sworn in as Governor General of St. Kitts and Nevis some 26 years later on January 1st, 1996. Neither Dr. Simmons nor Dr. Simmons knew what the future would bring. Sebastian knew what the future would bring. And one of the lessons, therefore, is that each of us must do the best we can. Whatever the circumstances we are faced with in life, do the best we can each day. Because we never know when the good Lord will bless us. Indeed, the story of the Christina is filled with pain and suffering. But ultimately, it's about the horror that begot heroism, which begot hope, and which in turn begot healing, as well as personal growth and metamorphosis. Indeed, after 1970, we had one of the strongest periods of antagonism between St. Kitts and Nevis, or perhaps better put, between the governments. And yet, by 1983, the people of Nevis and St. Kitts would have moved beyond the difficult period post-1970 to move together as an independent nation. One people, one nation, one destiny. It is a story that is the Christina story, is one that we shall never forget, because out of the depths of despair, we rose to become who we are today, a strong and sturdy people, united by our profound love of family, community, and country. The stories of the Christina will always remain with us as an inspiration, for they make it crystal clear that a hero resides in all of us, and that the human spirit can overcome anything as long as we have God and a support system in our lives, whether that consists of family, teachers, friends, and other loved ones. Out of the depths of despair, we rose to build productive lives and a nation of progress. It wasn't easy, but we did so in honor of those we lost, and we shall continue steadfastly on our journey, never forgetting their sacrifice. That is why I wholeheartedly endorse the mounting of this exhibition by the St. Christopher National Trust and the National Museum of St. Kitts. And I would commit that in our next budget, we will set aside $25,000 to meet the next exhibition, and we will continue to do so each year. I want to pledge further that my government will, before the next commemorative event next year, properly establish an appropriate memorial in honor of the memory of those who have perished. And because of our strong commitment to learn from the history, the President indicated that he would need $1.5 million to take this property, preserve it, and to make it more beautiful. Certainly, he doesn't expect that from the government, nor from you. But to make a start, the government will pledge $2 million EC dollars towards this particular development. We have always been supportive of this trust and museum, and we will continue to do so, because we certainly do appreciate the invaluable work that it is doing and can do in anchoring our people in helping our young people in particular find themselves, find hope, find inspiration to the lives of others, their difficulties and their triumph. We still believe that our future is a bright one. 50 years after Christina disaster, we may ask what good has come of that. Yesterday, all of the speakers after me enumerated a number of wonderful things that have happened post-Christina disaster. They spoke about the improvement, for example, in maritime regulations, in both safety and security, and all the other issues that have developed. They spoke about how the political leaders meandered from secession to become one in a united country. There is still hope. There is still hope. Out of this very sad story is a powerful lesson about triumph, about solidarity, about survival, and in it hope. And we look for perhaps some way of understanding this. And someone once told me, everything that happened now, it happened before in the Bible. And I tried to find in the Bible some story about what good could come out of a tragedy of this nature. My mind went quickly to Job, how he lost all material and familial stuff. And in the end, because he remained faithful and looked optimistically to his God, he was repaid, Pastor Brown, was it twice? Double, twice what he had lost. Good things can still come out of tragedy. And my mind went somewhere in Genesis, but I won't ask the pastor to help me, lest I confuse him too. But it was a story, I think, of Joseph, who went into captivity, slavery, was imprisoned, and yet he rose to lead a country and to be a good example. I hope out of all the suffering that people have had, some until today are not strong enough to hear the word Christina being mentioned in their midst. Before I came today, I spoke to my good friend Lordcut, and I said, I can't believe we are so good. I've never heard you talk about Christina. I said, I had to go to Whitman Brown to know your name was Devon Liebert. And I said, but why haven't you sung about Christina? It seemed there is so much there. And Lordcut said to me, I have thought about it. He has never felt strong enough to do it. 50 years after, people are still finding some way to bring closure to their grief, to their circumstances. I went to school, I said, with Romeo. I never heard Romeo speak about Christina disaster. 50 years later, these memories are still vividly with our survivors. We are going to have to help them to talk it out. Of course, in 1970s, psychological support and all of those things were not readily available. And we still were part of a society which says that men should not shed tears and men should not appear weak. I want to commend all the survivors though. Whatever their circumstances now, they are our unsung heroes who have found the way, despite the oppression of the 1970 loss, despite their own dread and fear and moments of uncertainty. They walk the walk each day with the help and encouragement from some one of us. Today, many of them are still good examples to their children, to their families, and to their communities. I pray God's continuing blessing on this country that I love and the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Thank you. May God continue to bless us.
A round of applause for our Prime Minister, Dr. Timothy Harris, on his factual, gripping stuff. And we thank you, sir, for sharing with us this afternoon. Well, that brings us to the end of this ceremony here this afternoon. I'm going to ask Willis to come and tell us what's going to take place, the tour of the exhibit here at the National Museum. I don't know if we should line up or we have to observe social distancing protocols. So Willis, tell us exactly where we're going and how the format, if you will.
Thank you. I will invite the president to say a few words before I tell you about the exhibit, because you see me smiling? Those figures got me smiling. If y'all could look back and see Tony probably behind you smiling too. The challenges were real. Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen and ladies, on behalf of the St. Christopher National Trust, I thank the Prime Minister for the commitment he has given this afternoon with regards to the support of the Trust's work and the restoration of the Trust's building. I would like to, however, whilst the Prime Minister is in a giving mood, ask him to also pledge that the teaching of Christina be in the curriculum of our schools. It is missing. How often do we meet young people for whom the name Christina is but a girl's name? And as you told the story of Lord Cut, there are those who survived who do not have the courage, who don't have the fortitude to tell their children. And they should be told, because there are so many myths about what happened that afternoon. It was raining, people ran to one side of the boat, and all these stories. But the truth, in a very dispassionate and factual way, needs to be told to our people. As Mr. Socrates said in his Calypso, we know lots about the Titanic. We know nothing about Christina. And so I ask you, sir, while still in your giving mood, please give us in our school curriculum, through your Ministry of Education, the teaching of Christina and its effects on this country, onto the people of St. Kitts. Thank you very much in advance for $2 million. Thank you in advance for $25,000. And I look forward to my successor thanking you on the receipt of the check.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I too want to thank all of you for coming this afternoon and for being one of the few to have the first look at this exhibition. Now, the space is small, obviously, because the museum, we have two major exhibits right now. We have the one of Sir Kennedy, and now we just put this one up. So the space is not great. We've tried to utilize the space as best we could in order to tell the story. You may see some mishaps. Don't worry, we're going to have them fixed on Wednesday, you know, printing and all of that. Some things got chopped off, so please. And all those English teachers in the audience, we accept the corrections of the grammatical errors you may see there. So, and those we will fix as well once you point them out to us. So we're going to go upstairs and we're going to tour the exhibit. So you can come up, and while some go in, some can view the other exhibit while, you know. But just remember that we don't want to get COVID. We know it's not here, but we don't want to get it still. And so just for protocol's sake, be mindful. So I'm going to lead you all upstairs and escort you all into the exhibit room. And then we go from there. Okay? And then, as I said at the beginning, and I'm saying again, you will, you should, you must come back and take your time and read the exhibition, read the stories, and drop something in the donation boxes. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Jihan, you're gonna do Wednesday night, last week Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I'm just waiting to see if the same people want to come back.
I'm sure they will.
The preparations people, I think they had something yesterday.
Oh.
But I don't know, I have people. I
Right.
have people for the next